Well, we can speak now to Lawrence Krauss, a theoretical physicist and president of the non-profit Origins Project Foundation, which discusses science and culture. Great to have you with us. It was certainly a very successful launch for Jeff Bezos. Where do you think it leaves us in terms of this idea of space tourism and being able to travel as a paying passenger?
Well, I don't think it leaves us very far. It was a nice little 7-minute joyride, more or less, for them. I worked it out. It's about 3 times the length of time you go on a carnival ride, during which you also experience a little bit of weightlessness if you're on a roller coaster, at about 1 million times the cost. And to go any higher than, they spend about a couple of minutes in quote unquote space. To spend 2 times more time in space would cost maybe 10 times more money. And it's exponential after that. This was a nice joyride, but I don't see the fundamental physics changing in a way that's going to make this cheap, easily accessible, or particularly worthwhile. It was a little jump, a 7 minute. It's like a carnival ride, and it should be treated as a carnival ride. I don't see this as heralding the entry of people into space in any significant way.
I guess there's a reason only billionaires have done it so far. I was going to ask you, I think you've answered the question. I mean, I'm certainly not a billionaire. I'm assuming you're not a billionaire. So does this mean that these kind of space trips are forever going to be out of the reach of the ordinary person?
Well, I tweeted about this today, and some people said, well, look at the price of computers and all of that. But the difference is that's based on literally quantum semiconductor technology. But trying to get into space is really Newton's laws, and those haven't changed. And the amount of energy required to get into space translates into fuel, the logistics. Sure, it'll come down a little bit, but I don't see it coming down from $28 million per person to something that any normal people can afford. Plus, we have to remember that it's really dangerous. I'm very happy this was safe. But if you look at, say, the U.S. space shuttle, which was one of the most well-tested bits of equipment in the world, 2% of the people who went up in that died. And if 2% of the people who went in airplanes died, we wouldn't have airplanes flying around. And I think one has to realize that space travel in any significant way is not only expensive, but it's dangerous. And I worry that the first time, and I hope there are no accidents, but the first time, if an accident occurs, that's going to change the dynamics even more.
What do you think about Jeff Bezos's comments that this isn't just about space tourism, this is about development, about making space travel more commonplace so that one day, in his imagination, we can move industry off the planet, we can put polluting industries into space. I'm not sure I like the idea of that, but making the Earth a safer place.
Well, look, it sounds nice, but just think about this. This 10-minute flight is something like what Alan Shepard did, in what was it, 1961 or 62 or something like that. There's nothing, the technology. In fact, I've talked to Elon Musk about this. Sending rockets into space isn't really rocket science. It's basic fundamental technology, and therefore recreating what was already done 40, 50, 60 years ago, just because you're a private enterprise, I don't see that it makes a significant change. And the question I always have when people talk about not just space tourism, but business in space is what's the business plan? Because it's expensive for this, but this was just 10 minutes. If you want to orbit the planet, you're talking about an order of magnitude more money. If you want to get out into space to the moon or somewhere else, you're talking about an order of magnitude more money. And what's the business plan where you can actually try and get a profit for that? So I think it's going to be, I like the vision of going into space, but I think the reality is such that it's going to be a long time. And I'm not convinced that, except for near-Earth orbiting like SpaceX does right now, I'm not convinced private industry is going to be at the spearhead of it. I think that the money is so great that ultimately governments will have to be involved, whether it's the moon or Mars or beyond.
Great to speak with you, Lawrence. Thanks very much indeed for that. Lawrence Krauss there.